We have a speaker ready for tonight. We have Patrick to introduce her. Clay, do you have any announcements before we get started?
If I could point them out, if they want to stand and say a few words, we have Vivek is right here. Hi, everybody. Vivek. He is first time meeting tonight. And just joined. Anything you want to say quickly?
I am a general photographer. I have reached the point where I have something akin to writer's block, so I thought joining a crowd of photographers will make motivation take more photographs.
Okay. Gary Cook is here. Gary is not here, but he needs to tell us about this Saturday, there's a trip that you can join us on a walkabout. And anybody else planning to go on that? That's which is where, it's Shoot a Band, where they're gonna have a
And that's at Spirit of Texas Distillery and Brewery.
It's on the frontage road, north of Kelly Lane. It's on the toll road 130 frontage road, so you don't have to get on the toll road. You should get off the toll road. But it's yeah, it's on the right. You can look it up. It's
They've got a steak outside. They've got a bar and beer. And they're they got really good bourbon.
Oh. So yes, if you're not motivated to enter competition, then there's that walkabout. It's really a lot of fun. I've done some of those. We have other new members, the Chathams. You want to say a little bit about it?
Hi, I'm Don. This is Leslie.
Leslie.
We travel quite a bit, and love to do photography and the show, joined up the game a little bit. So.
Thank you.
We're just getting in-person meetings, aren't we? And it's a little strange. So yeah. I know John and I can't remember your name. Kurt?
Cody.
Thank you for the last meeting. You want to add? And Sheldon is a new member, a couple months now, so it's very good you all came out to meet us all. I'll talk to them after the program is over and kind of get to know them. And thank you, Bill. I think that's what I have.
Okay. I got the program. I'm dangerous always when I have a program. I actually have a program tonight. Yes. Okay. Yes. The first of many to go, other than the other two people we've had. Okay, so good evening, everybody. I'd like to introduce, this is Sonja Summerfield. She was born in Germany, but she's lived here in the States long enough that she has very little accent left. So you can ask, but never mind. So she started her professional career as a photographer in the late 90s. And then she went on to get her master's degree. And I just found out it was a master's degree in large format studio photography while living in Paris. So she's done a lot of advertising work and luxury photo work. And so now she's she moved over here in 2014 and eventually became the editor of the Texas Wildlife magazine. Hence the ones that you might, there are copies here for you if you wish to take it home. Sonja is the photo editor for all of this. And so tonight she's going to tell us all about being the photo editor, and questions afterwards are more than welcome. And so Sonja, I'll leave it up to you.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it. Like you mentioned, Sonja Summerfield. I've been with Texas Parks and Wildlife now for almost 10 years. After I moved back, I actually lived in Texas before I went to do my master's. I got my undergrad at Southwest, Texas State, sorry. I'm gonna age myself right there. After I got my undergrad, I stayed as a photographer and did that the whole entire time. That's why I got my MFA, why I chose large format. I just really enjoyed it. I know it's not really useful nowadays, but it's a really, really cool camera. If you ever get a chance to play with an 8x10 or 4x5, I highly recommend it. And we have great people here in town. Holland Photos does a great job with processing film and buying film. So we're in a very good spot in Austin for that kind of stuff. Tonight I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what a photo editor does, how you can possibly talk to magazines and get published in magazines, and a couple of ways that you can do that. And then I'll talk to you specifically about how I find new photographers and how contributing to the magazine works. And yes, it is a paid gig. We pay everyone that contributes to the magazine, because I believe every artist should get paid. You should not give your work away for free unless it's for a really good cause. All right, I'll get started. If you have any questions during it, it's pretty informal, ask away, but I'll leave it at the end of some questions and I'll stay behind after the presentation. Anyone that wants to talk to me, like Patrick said, there's magazines, feel free to take a copy. This is the May issue that just came out. This year is the 100th anniversary for Texas State Parks. And so they're making a very big deal about it. You'll see HEB has now gotten on board. We have billboards with them and the foundation. I think Governor Abbott's going to do something special next month for it because it is a very, very big deal. They're even thinking about putting a bill in place that allows for some budget money to go to parks, and that'll be exciting because if you don't know, we are in the process of losing a state park this year. It's being sold, not by the state. It was leased to the Texas for like 55 years, but it is privately owned. There's several state parks that fall under this. So it is their right to say, we're going to go ahead and sell this. And a private developer is probably going to buy it and take it over. But in turn, they're trying to introduce a bill where we get to buy more parklands and possibly get more state parks. There is 6 state parks that we have parkland for that haven't opened yet. And hopefully with this new funding that's coming in, they'll get some infrastructure out there and they'll open those new 6 parks. The first one will be Palo Pinto. That is already in the works. It should be open by spring of next year, if not sooner. It is the state, so it'll probably be spring of next year. All right. Fairfield. It's a shame. Memorial Day weekend will be the last weekend, as far as we know. So if you have not had a chance to go out to Fairfield, it's a beautiful, beautiful lake. It is a reservoir lake, meaning that the people who owned it is the people who, it's a cooling lake. So it's, of course, it's man-made. In fact, all lakes in Texas are man-made except for Caddo Lake. That's the only real lake that we have. The private developer is not only buying the state park, but he's buying all the land around it. And unfortunately, that lake will be private if this goes through. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, now is your time. Aha. There you go. Awesome. I already told you a little bit about me. Photo editing work is very, very interesting. It's a little bit of photography. It's a lot of photo submissions. It's a lot of working with other photographers and with editorial to get the right photos. It's working with the art designer. You are basically in a huge team and you all contribute to try to get the magazine out. The magazine is, we do 10 a year. We have 2 double issues. Most magazines work this way. It's unfortunately, a lot of magazines are going out of fashion because paper costs are extremely high. During COVID, what happened is that they didn't produce any paper. And so we're basically buying up the rest of the stock. They've started producing paper again, but there's very little stock out there. So the paper costs are outrageously high. You'll notice your favorite magazines will probably have less quality paper because we just can't find the good paper anymore, or it's out so expensive, it's just not even worth it. A lot of magazines are also closing their doors and becoming digitized only. We are both digitally and paper, and I hope that will never go away because I like the tactile feel of paper. All right. So what does a photo editor actually do? My days are spent with looking at what the editorial is in a magazine every single month and saying, how can we visually showcase this editorial in both the print and on the website and on our app. And then you talk with an art director who kind of gives you an idea of what she's looking for. You also talk to your editorial and say, how many pages do you want for this? They put a book together, and then it's your job to go out there and find the photographs. So the first thing I do is I maintain a relationship with a whole bunch of photographers. I have probably about 350 photographers that I work with. It's not a huge number when you realize very quickly that every photographer has its own little niche. So you're never going to have one photographer that's going to be the ability to give all of it to you. A, Texas is huge, and B, birding photographers don't really do action shots of someone, you know, walking a trail or something along those lines. So you kind of have to know who is where and what they like to do. So I have a huge spreadsheet and I just kind of maintain those relationships, and I'm always looking for new photographers, especially people where I don't have a lot of photographers or who do something extremely special that I don't have a lot of. I do have a lot of birding photographers. Weirdly. I think birding photography has like gone crazy high during COVID. Everybody went out and started shooting birds, which is a great thing because there's a lot of birds out there. And personally, in-house, Texas Parks and Wildlife hardly ever produces our own wildlife for birding. Not because we don't want to, it just requires a lot of patience, a lot of time, and being at the right place at the right time. And that's something we don't have a lot of time for. So another thing I do is I select all of these photographs from different people, from lots of places, and I have to cull them down and put selections together, organize them for each particular article. It's very time consuming. It helps with Lightroom. If you're not a Lightroom fan, I highly recommend that you catalog your photographs, keyword your photographs, and do all that kind of stuff, and do it every single time you shoot, because the last thing you want to do is shoot a whole entire month and then you're going to sit down in front of your computer for days and days and days doing that. So great way to do it. I like Lightroom personally because it lets you have collections. It lets you put multiple photographs in different folders without having more than one photograph, because it's just pointing to the same photograph over and over again. It's a great way to stay organized. So here's just a screenshot of my organization, I'm a little out of control. Just every single month, I list every single article, put things in there, and I work ahead quite a bit because, as you know, magazines work ahead about 2 or 3 months. So if we're looking for things like wildflowers or fall or Santa pictures in a state park, we need to have all that kind of stuff early on and kind of collect those. And so my catalog is not just for this month, but it's going to be for the whole entire year. And hopefully I have enough editorial given to me that says this is what we're going to talk about the whole entire year. And we have about 80%. There's things that change. When you work for a state agency, what happens a lot is that bigwigs come down and say, we need you to talk about this month. So now you have to push this, find new stuff. It happens. I think almost all magazines, if something happens that's very pertinent to the magazine in news or in legislation or whatever it is, a big event coming up, they'll do the same thing. They'll push other articles and say, we have to talk about that this month. Another thing that I do is I create monthly photo lists, and a lot of photo editors will do this. Because I have so many contributors, it's just easier for me to say, unless I talk to one person individually looking for something, I will actually create a whole entire photo list and say, these are the photos that I'm missing. And I'll give you very specific details on what's in that photo list, like what birds I'm looking for, if I'm looking very specific for a bird doing something or something along those lines. And I'll send that out once a month. Missed the slide. And then another thing I do is I stalk social media. And websites. I have to say, I approach a lot of photographers through hashtag. If you don't use social media, you're kind of missing out. Instagram is a wealth of, I know a lot of photo editors do this, hashtag things, have a public account. This does not have to be your private, talking to your friends, whatever. Have a photo account that you make public and then hashtag your photos, because someone will look through and will find, oh, I'm looking for a night shot at Cooper Breaks. Where can I get that from? So I'll look through those hashtags and I'll find a photographer and I'll approach them and be like, hey, I'm interested in purchasing your photography for the magazine. Would you be willing to sell it? And another thing I do is I spend a lot of time in Photoshop. I spend a lot of time tweaking people's photography. I prefer to do it on my end rather than someone doing it on their end, because they may have a preference. And what I find a lot of times is they'll Photoshop something for the web and it makes it look beautiful. It's completely different when you put it in print. I'm sure you've noticed if you've ever printed a photo out compared to like, if you put it on Instagram or a website, it's all flashy and beautiful. You print it out and you're just like, I think I went a little too far with that. So I spend a lot of time tweaking little things here and there. And lately I've been spending a lot of time masking things out because I have an art director who likes cut out images. It's driving me crazy. We're doing a great editorial about flies. I had about 8 flies to cut out in the last 2 days, and that is not fun. They're hairy, they're disgusting, and I have tried every trick in the book to do quick selects, and it came down to me actually going through with my stylist and masking out hair by hair. It was terrible. So this is just an example. This is one of Chase's shot. Did Chase come and talk to you? In October. Ooh, our agency photographer, oh, I lost my name tag. Oh, well. Our agency photographer, Chase, shoots for the agency, but he loves doing stuff for the magazine. So he'll ask me when he has a little bit of extra time, what he can shoot. So he just happens to go up to the state park and shoot. And even he will give me kind of work files. I just enhance them, make them look a little bit better. I try to avoid making anything look fake. I try not to fake skies. You can fake skies. Photoshop has the sky replacement tool now that is just amazing. I suggest if you're going to do that, shoot your own skies and then just put them in there. Don't use the ones that Photoshop gives you. All right, so all magazines are a little bit different. Every magazine has some sort of stylish art direction. So if you want to showcase your work, you need to do your homework on where you can showcase your work. So subject-wise, where do you put it? What fits my style that I'm shooting now? What region are we in? Those kind of things. There's lots of magazines out there. There's even digital magazines, and almost everyone pays, unless it's a really local regional magazines. They should at least give you a little bit of money, because if they have advertisers to support them, yes, they're going to have some sort of surplus to pay writers and to pay photographers. Now, that being said, there's lots of publications out there that likes to try to get things for free. I won't name any names. I'm sure you've run across them. And another thing that you want to know, that magazine talks to certain demographics. There is an easy way to find out. We have to showcase how many, what our publication run is, who our demographics is, and what kind of subject matter. So we have to put it in categories. It's required by law. Every magazine has to do this. If it is published, that is required by law. If it's just digitized, they're supposed to, but there's a loophole in between there. So there's an easy way to find out how many people they talk to. And this is a great thing to know, not only if your photos are going to be showcased in it, but what kind of price range that you should look for. because photos are priced on how big they are, where they are in the publication, and what the publication run is. So there is no, this is your price, there is a standard range, and they should fall in that standard range, and if they don't, probably not a great magazine to work with. I would try to pick someone else. All right. Every magazine also has websites. Websites will list who all the people are that work for the website. Almost all of them will have a photo editor. If they don't, they have an art director. That's going to be your fallback. You can look online. Bigger ones will show you what your guidelines are, as in, how do I contribute to you? And they should tell you a little bit about what they're looking for, how to contribute to them, and those kind of things. Our website, on the editorial page, you'll see I have a long list of stuff, and I even put my photo submission guidelines on there, but it's easy enough to get them from there. Once you find out who the photo editor is, that's who you need to talk to. Try not to do the general email for magazines, because you'll get lost in this huge pile of people complaining, people saying they didn't get a magazine, or how can I do this and how can you do that? And it's usually the business manager that handles this. And my business manager handles our general email, and she gets probably about 300 emails a day. You can see where you can get lost in that little thing. So know who the photo editor is, and then email the photo editor. It's pretty easy. Back when I started photography, I did a lot of advertising, but part of advertising is editorial advertising. So you do talk to photo editors, but those were the days where you actually made an appointment, showed them your book. We don't do that anymore, especially after this period of the pandemic. I don't know any photo editor that's going to be like, let's make an appointment. And unless they're looking for something specific, you just want to email that photo editor. All right. Photo editors are extremely busy. My days are not always the same. I try to get back to people pretty on a regular basis, but sometimes it's not going to be that same day or that same week. I try to answer emails pretty much every other week with certain things. So the one thing that you want to do is write an email, wait a little while, be patient, see if they'll respond back to you. If not, just write a little follow-up email like, oh, did you happen to see my email? Something along those lines. The last thing you want to do is bug a photo editor if they see you over and over again. I get to the point where I'm just like, I'll get back to you. I mean, I get about 100 emails a day, and you kind of have to sift through all those. So sometimes we miss them, but you also want to not just completely disappear. So a really good email is something really short and sweet. What you want to do. There's some feedback.
Our meeting,
Oh.
just wanted to be sure we had some audio.
So emails are a very short little thing about you. What kind of photography do you do? For me, it would be like what part of Texas you live in, or where you travel to most, or that kind of things. And then you want to link to a little digital gallery of things that would interest me. And you also maybe want to link to just your website or your Instagram page, and just kind of leave it short, simple, and get out. Like I said, I usually email back in about a week. If you don't hear back, what you want to do is follow up. I would say that's once a month. So what do you show? The one thing that you want to remember is just in the days where you went and showed your portfolio, and if you've never had that very humiliating part where you stand in front of someone and they go, okay, thanks. One thing you got to remember is don't have a lot of time. I do not want to sift through your whole entire website of 300 images. Don't send me 100 bird photos. I see one bird photo, that's good. I got the general idea. One thing is you want to keep it very manageable. I say 8 to 12 photos, that's plenty. I get the general idea of what you can shoot, what your quality is, and that's why you want to pick some really nice stuff that showcase your work, not only in subject matter, but also your style. And you just want to make it relevant to me. Photo editors love seeing work outside. So if you want to say, hey, here's my personal work of things that are maybe not related, but showcase the kind of work that you do, or if you have a technique that you have really mastered and those kind of things that make you a unique photographer, definitely. But within that small portfolio, for me, it would be like, okay, landscapes, wildlife, state parks, people doing things in state parks, very action forwarded. Understand that we are in the world where we're trying to show an inclusion for everyone. So big thing is a diverse subject matter. So don't shoot the same people over and over again. Try to find some other people. Most people are really, really nice. If you just say, hey, I'm a photographer, introduce yourself and say, this is what I'm doing a project for, they're okay with it. And sometimes you can offer, hey, give me your email address and I'll be happy to send you a photo or a print, something along those lines.
Right.
Yes.
Do you need releases?
No. So you only need model releases if you do commercial work. Meaning that because this is editorial, if you're selling it to advertising companies, you do need model releases, and you also need, for some places, you'll also need a location release. So you have to kind of figure out, where am I? State parks are different. State parks are state grounds. You do not need model releases and you don't need landmark releases. Now, if you do a commercial shoot in a state park, you do need a release for that, only because they want to make sure that you're not doing something nefarious in a state park and bad reputation, that kind of thing. What you publish for editorial, you do not really need releases for it. I say that, but I will say, be real careful with kids. If you don't get a model release from their parents, at least have their information. That way you don't get trouble later on. Kids are still kind of that weird subject. In Europe, it's a big no-no. You're not even on editorial unless you have a release from their parents. You're not allowed to shoot them. Here in the United States, you can. If they're on public land, you can do that. If they're on private land, you do need permission for kids, but it's just a handshake. Just ask their parents, hey, this is what I'm going to do with this photo. Is that okay with you? All right. There's a couple ways that you can send to photo editors. If you have a beautiful photograph that you know is going to work for the magazine, send it in. Unsolicited photographs, two things will happen. One, I'm going to keep that unsolicited photo in a catalog that's in a different part of my catalog, so I know it's there. And I have a note to myself that if I ever use it, I'll contact the photographer, ask permission, say what it's for, that kind of thing. Happens all the time. I have that one great shot that I'm just like, oh, someone gave that to me last year. I was like, perfect. Now I have an editorial to put it in. Let me contact them. Even happened to, there's a photographer in there who sent me this great shot of two people hiking almost a year and a half ago. And it was just perfect for one of the images in this magazine. So I contacted her and she goes, oh, I can't believe you still have that. I keep unsolicited photos for probably about 3 or 4 years. And then that catalog kind of gets renewed.
Keyword
Yes.
when you get unsolicited photos, so the photographer doesn't have to do anything.
No, it's better if you do, because when I search through my Lightroom catalog, I use keywords, but unsolicited photographs, I almost always will go in there, give myself notes when I got it, email name, phone number, anything that I think might help me later on to kind of contact that person or find that photograph, I will go in there and do it. I would say though, keyword your photographs. All right, so the next thing is photo assignments. I do send out photo assignments. There's lots of things that we use that for. A lot of it is events. For me, it's adventure events. So if I have 3 people going out on a 3-trip hike, I'm gonna need a photographer to go with them. I have an agency photographer, and then we also have a new magazine photographer that just started last year. I will see if they're busy. If not, I will use them. Otherwise, thank you. Otherwise, I will contact someone who expressed an interest in doing adventure photography. This is where my spreadsheet of all these people come back together. I'm so glad I'm so organized. And see if that's the kind of style and if they're up for those kind of things, because it could be a low-key kind of event, or it could be a very long event. I sent someone with 4 other people to go down the Devil's River, and that was 3 days. It was kind of grueling, but I found the right person because he's done this before, and so I knew who to contact. Or someone to go down spearfishing, which will be, I think, in the next issue. I needed someone who was an underwater photographer who is willing to go down to 90 feet and shoot and do those kind of things. So photo assignments still exist. They become a little bit rare because of the cost involved in it. But I would say I use probably about 15 to 20 photographers a year that I send out on assignments. The other thing is you can become a contributor, and this goes back to, if you send me an email, I love your gallery. I think it's going to fit really, really well in the magazine. I don't see one in there at that moment in time that I think would be relevant for something coming up in my catalog, but I'll be like, hey, can I send you a monthly photo list? Do you want to become a regular contributor to the magazine? And that way we have a running relationship. So you get emails from me, and you can send me stuff if something comes up, or say, hey, I'm going out and shooting this project. How would your magazine be interested in? Do you have anything upcoming of it? And I say, oh, you're going to, I don't know, the Piney Woods. I have a story about trees coming up. So could you please shoot some extra photographs of this and turn them into me? All right. So submissions, my favorite part. I actually publish, like I told you, a submission guideline on the website. Every magazine, we have different requirements from people depending on if it's a 4-color press, if it's web, or any of those kind of things. So submissions, one thing that you always have to pay attention to is resolution. Everyone wants different resolutions. Some people want small little JPEGs, some people want uncompressed TIFFs. I want uncompressed TIFFs. Some people want small, so you have to meet their minimum resolution. We go to a 4-color press, so our press demands the photo has to be at least the size for us to be able to use them. I can upsize things. It's gotten better over the years, but it's not a great solution. So remind yourself, if you're shooting in RAW, and hopefully all of y'all are shooting in RAW, and using things like Lightroom, you can store the raw image, and then you can just put whatever resolution you want as an export function. Hello. My art director made this, so he thinks it's hilarious because this is the one thing I harp on all the time. So file format. Don't send people your RAWs. Your RAW is like your negative. It is how you can prove that it actually belongs to you. So if you ever have a copyright image, if someone uses something where they weren't supposed to, that raw image in your catalog gives you the right, and you'll win every single court case that way. So you shouldn't send out your raw images. It is very, very, very rare that I turn around and ask someone for their raw image. And it's usually because they overprocess something. What I usually say, take your raw image, don't process, send me the TIFF or something along those lines. Oh, another thing, one reason why a lot of people don't like JPEGs, I'm sure you've already learned this. the more that you save as a JPEG, the worse your resolution gets. You degrade that every single time because what happens, it compresses, uncompresses, compresses, uncompresses. And that's where JPEG artifacts will happen. And I see that quite often when people send me photographs. I'm just like, oh, I was just like, do you have the original uncompressed file? Because I love your photo. I just see a lot of issues with it. And when I take it to press, it's just not going to look good on a page. It may look great on a screen, but it's not going to look good published. So the other thing is metadata. I cannot stress enough, you should be using metadata. The one thing you should always put on there is your copyright and your credit line every single time. 2 reasons. A, that protects your photo as yours. And B, if you ever publish somewhere out in the web and someone goes, ooh, this is the perfect photo for me. What I can do is save as, I can look at the metadata and know how to contact you. So the other thing is I would actually put an email address on there as well. The minimum requirements for most photo editors is you need to put a credit line, a copyright, and an email. The reason for that is because once we publish, I need to know how to credit you in the magazine. And that could be anything. It could be your name, it could be your handle for your Instagram, it could be your website, however you want to be put out there. So it's important to put that on there. Your copyright is important on there because I need to know who to pay. Another thing that I require is captions, because I want to know simple captions. They don't have to be outrageous. I want to know what it is, where it is, when it was taken, and maybe why did you take it? Something interesting about it. That's enough. It's also a great thing for yourself because you get to go back and say, huh, where was this? Another thing is when you search, you can actually search captions. If I forget to keyword or someone else forgets to keyword, at least it will keyword the captions. So I know if I'm looking for, hey, kayaking on the Guadalupe River, it's going to be in that caption, and that's how I'm going to find that photograph. I wonder how many images I have in my catalog. I should have probably looked before I came here. I'll bet you it's close to 1 million by now. All right, editorial use. Certain things that what we talked about is that you have to know who your audience is. You need to know who that magazine, that website, or whoever you're trying to get published through, who are they talking to? If you give me one of these photographs, I'm gonna be like, yeah, no. We are a hunting magazine, but we talk more about conservation hunting. Things that we don't do is really showcase people with guns or showcase bloody animals. We try to be very artistic about it. So it's more about the act of conservation rather than hunting as a sport, because we just don't do that. Now, there's plenty of publications that do, and they would probably love a beautiful woman holding a gun, standing heroically. We just don't happen to be one. Another thing is old photographs. You want to stay relevant. That doesn't mean that all old photographs are terrible. There's probably some in your catalog that you're just like, oh, these are great, I'm going to keep on using them. 2 things you got to remember. A, this is obviously film. How can I tell? Because it's lost all its red color. That's what happens to old slides. And the other way that I can tell is their clothing, but the life jackets they're wearing. The life jackets, those would not be what you can wear nowadays. So I would never be able to publish it just for that reason alone. So those are the kind of the things that you need to keep in mind is, does the clothes age you? Does the equipment you're using, is that still being used? I have a feeling those canoes probably still exist somewhere. Another thing is that you got to know that every magazine is looking for a particular place that you take a photograph. Ours just happens to be that it has to be in the state of Texas, with the exception of wildlife. If it is a species that occurs in Texas and you happen to be across in Oklahoma, don't tell me it's a no-go. I'm okay with that. Especially if it's a rare species. I will take anything. As long as the background looks like Texas, we're gonna be okay. But for the most part, a magazine that publishes, especially a regional magazine, you need to keep it within that region, within that state, within that area. And you can tell from the background. So make sure that, hey, is that what that looks like? That kind of thing. Especially bird photographs. We pay huge attention because birds migrate so far about what kind of shrubbery is behind them, what kind of trees are behind them, all that kind of stuff. And yes, I have an ornithologist who checks all my photographs, and there's plenty of times he's like, that's not Texas. No, wildlife for us does not have to be in the state park. Birds don't have to be in the state park. The only things that are required in the state park is if I actually say in the state park or in a state park. And usually when I say that, I want something that showcases something about that state park that you can recognize. If you've been to a state park, there's usually some sort of land feature or something along the lines that makes that state park unique. But all other photos, no. If I'm asking for people to like a kayak shot down the river and I don't tell you which river, care less what river, as long as it's in Texas then. Another thing is snapshots. Try to have photos that speak to someone's emotions. For us, it's about getting people outside. That is the motto for Texas Parks and Wildlife. And we try to get everyone, encourage them to go outside and know that the outside is for everyone. So that's for us. But I can tell you right now, most magazines are not going to enjoy snapshot photographs. They want something artistic that looks natural. Another thing that you want to do is vary up your angles and your orientations. We like horizontals and verticals because we have art directors who get it in their mind before they see the picture and they're just all like, I want this right here. So if I can't give her a vertical shot, then I'm going to have to pass you up. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have a great shot that I won't turn around and say, hey, I love this series. Do you have any more in this series that I maybe can crop vertically, or did you shoot something vertically? But it is a good thing to keep in mind that when you're going out there is to vary up the orientation. Other thing is vary up your angle of view. Those 5-6 shots over and over and over again get a little bit boring. I have a great photographer, won't mention his name. He's published many, many books. And when you look through his books, it's always very interesting because he's always has that same angle of view over and over again. Even though the subject matter changes and everything else, it's just like, why can't you just like get on the ground, look up, get a little bit higher, look down. I mean, just vary it up and show a reader or show your audience something a little bit different, what your eye can see. But over and over again at the same height doesn't really work. And we already talked about this. Don't overprocess your photographs. Lightroom and Photoshop are amazing. Lightroom has gotten really amazing. I mean, there's the new one that they came out with the auto masking tools and everything. You could change your photographs to something completely different. Don't overdo it. Enhance what's there. If you're shooting raw, you already know that you already have all this information in this much space. So you have to squeeze that information. And so when you're shooting raw, you're just like, dude, why is that blown out? It's not, it's just that the computer doesn't know how to put it into this little tiny space. Even worse is that here's raw. Here's what you see on your screen. Here is the color variations that I get to publish. CMYK is not very big. That's one thing to also stick with. Adobe RGB or one of the bigger, larger RGB formats, and let that photo editor take that and compress it down to, I have ICC profiles from the press and CMYK, and I'd rather do that than someone else because you don't have my particular ICC profile. This is the one that I always laugh at. I'm just like, yes, we want beautiful photographs of people smiling, of like nice groups and everything else, but don't make it look staged. I have to say, a lot of these photographs in here, yes, they are staged. I will not lie. There is a picture of the Guadalupe River State Park. That is my family, because that's the only people that I could get to go out there in freezing cold water and act like they're swimming, who are great sports about it. Yes, every part of that was staged. I'm hoping that it does not look staged. So that's one thing you do have to remember. Talk to people, say, oh, can you just move over a little bit and stuff like that, but make them relax so they're just not staring you blindly at the camera. You want to make it look natural, but you also kind of want to keep compositions in there and get that right thing. The last thing I want is a whole bunch of back of people's heads or people not looking interesting. It takes one person's weird face to ruin the whole entire picture. Happens to me a lot, especially when I shoot my family. They're not very photogenic, or they just don't want to do it. All right. So certain things that you got to remember. It's great having inside images that one off that I am looking for a bird, or I'm looking for that kayaking shot, or I'm looking for this. The other things you got to remember, especially if someone sends you out for assignment, go ahead and shoot a cover. Because you never know. That's the highest paying photograph that you can get in the magazine. We pay $500 for it. But the things are, we all look for covers in a certain way. The first thing is that they have to be vertical. Makes sense, right? The other thing is it's gotta have some sort of non-detailed, contrasty things in the background. And that's because you want your subject to stand out, but that's also because we put text on the covers, and it's really important to be able to have some sort of text that's not going to fight with the background. Big thing for us and almost all magazines, we put our masthead in the same place every single issue, unless we do a redesign. All magazines work this way, and you have to leave space for that masthead to be there. That doesn't mean it has to be empty space. It just has to have something where it's not fighting with the background, and you can actually read the information that's on top of it. Speaking of which, and I will call out Chase for this because he shoots great cover shots, and then he doesn't leave me room for those skylines. The skylines are not very big. We've been doing this way for now 4 years, and the thing is I need something that's not going to fight, that's going to make that legible. And it's interesting because this is a very special issue, so it has none of that.
What's the skyline? I'm sorry.
These are skylines right here.
Oh, okay.
And it's usually going to be what we want to feature in the publication. It's usually going to be the features. I don't decide that text, but it's always going to be kind of the same way every single time. So skies up in that top part is really good. Blurred out backgrounds are really good. Monochromatic information in the background would be good. And the other thing is there has to be some sort of headline and subheads somewhere on the page. It doesn't always have to be there. It kind of plays wherever the subject matter is, however they want to do it. I don't design those. That's why we have an art director. The other thing you want to do is think about splash images. Second highest paying. So we pay anywhere from $300 to $400 for splash images because they're double page spreads. So the one thing that you want to have is know that it's going to be something that introduces that feature, and it's going to be something beautiful, something that is going to catch a reader's attention, because when they open that and they're like, ooh, I like this, and turn the page. It's a beautiful shot. That's Chase's shot of the HEB camp Blue Hole with a drone. He gets all the fun assignments. Sometimes it's about adventure. So we want to have something that showcases that adventure. One thing you got to remember when you're shooting a splash page is you have a spine. You don't want to put anything that's relevant, and that's fine, including a person. The last thing you want to do is cut a person in half when you open the magazine. So technically, shooting 1/3 are prettier for our eyes anyways, so it works real well to put a subject matter over to one side, but it also gives room for the editor to figure out how to put the title and some information, because there's always going to be some sort of words on the photograph. Would be great if we have no words whatsoever, it's just all photos, but that's just me. So little things like that, knowing that you have to somehow leave some room somewhere for that to work out. And sometimes I have these great photographs that I want to use, but it's cropped so tightly, I can't, because there's just no room for anything else to go onto that. And for the most part, unless it's an interior photograph, I need that extra negative space. Plus, it's nice to have a little bit of breathing room in photographs anyways. Yes.
There was a question in chat,
Mhm.
and I'm not exactly sure how you would interpret this, but the question is, do you recommend wide angle shot for the trucks?
So it all depends. It does not have to be. It depends on your subject matter. So I think the trucks are for the spreads within the. I'm not too sure how they're using the definition trucks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, right?
2-page spread.
So they don't have to be wide angle, because if you look at this one, this is an up close shot. That one's a wide angle, and that's also a wide angle. It's a drone, so. Oops. It doesn't have to be. I think you can get away with doing close-ups if you leave some room, or mid-range shots if you leave some room. It just depends on what your subject matter is. Occasionally we do vertical pages for an opening splash page. It's a little bit rare because I like big photography, so the bigger it gets published, the happier that I am. And thank goodness my art director feels the same way about photography. But sometimes it's really nice to have a nice image on one side and a whole bunch of text on the other side. That shot is by our new photographer, Megan Laham, and she did a beautiful job. It's actually a long exposure stacked photograph. All right. No, stacked as in multiple images put together, because she was doing that. That is the Sandhills at Monaghan's, but it has a night sky. It might be hard to see on there. That has a whole bunch of little stars on it. So she was actually doing night photography. So she just did different exposures and then later on stacked them together in Photoshop. Yes.
So a question for us would be, looking out to your more advanced schedule or even next year, do you have some topics or themes already that you can tell us about? And
Yeah, so-
go look for the photos.
So next year I don't, because that usually comes out in June. So within the next couple of weeks, I'll know what next year's editorial is, but I pretty much know for the rest of the year what it's going to be. Things that are coming up is going to be horseback riding in state parks. Dinosaur tracks all over Texas, including the ones at Dinosaur Valley State Park and Government Canyon. Trying to think of some other features. I know that there's a camping feature coming up, but I don't know. I don't think it's been written yet.
Holiday issue?
We will have a holiday issue for the December, but because it's the 100-year anniversary, it's going to be just more events this year. I do have to say that most of the time we try to do some sort of holiday theme every December that involves holiday outside, not just in state parks, of different ways that you can celebrate your holidays outside. That could be everything from decorating a camper to doing kayak races, all those kind of things. I have no idea what it's going to be for next year. Trying to also think, other things that we do is things for October. So anything kind of spooky. I think this year we're going to do haunted trails. Sometimes, oh, another big thing is fall foliage in state parks. We do that every single year. We try to vary it up. I cannot be at all parks at fall. We don't have a lot of that material. So if you catch yourself out in the fall and you catch some really great fall foliage in any park, that would be great. Same thing with wildflowers. It's a running theme. Us and Texas highways. Speaking of Texas highways, Brandon is the photo editor for Texas highways. He's a lovely person. He basically has this all the same that I do. He works with contributors, photo essay. We basically have the same program. He was my predecessor at TPW Magazine. Now he works over at Texas Highways for the last 10 years. He actually has more photo assignments. He just has a smaller group of photographers that he uses, but they have a much wider range of subject matter in Texas highways than what we do. They do a lot more travel pieces, which is really nice. They do a lot more landscape stuff. That's really nice. We're more focused on outdoor activities, wildlife, and that kind of thing. If you're interested in getting in contact with him, you just go to TxDOT website. Under Texas Highways, there is a little thing that talks about editorial. His email address is right in there.
He just wanted to have a couple of places in the photo, northwest region, but his dad was happy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's incredible.
Great guy. Another MFA. I forgot where he got his MFA from, but I think it's another MFA that's absolutely not useful for our job titles. You do not need an MFA to shoot photography or to be a photo editor. It's just, if you enjoy doing something and you find a program that you really like, it is a great opportunity to dive into a very niche photography program. It's expensive though. Yes.
Contribute. Just send in and contribute. Or if someone's submitting like a portfolio, just say, hey, here's my work. If you recommend that there be a little bit more varied, I mean, everybody has big band photos and things like that. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter because half the time, as long as the subject material is part of what the magazine talks about, I don't really care if it's Big Bend. However, if there is an Ocotillo in Big Bend, I've seen that shot a million times. So that's one thing you might want to stay away from. Just kind of see, even if the location's the same, how can your photograph be different from everyone else that shoots at that same spot?
And then if someone's submitting to become like one of your cool photographers, does most of the work need to be Texas based for the submission? Or if their style, they travel somewhat and have other locations, so you see the style? Is that
where it gets kind of hairy. I would prefer that within a small little selection that you send me, that it's all Texas based. But what you can say is, hey, these are the things that I do. I'm working on, gathering more stuff in Texas. And if I like your style, your atmosphere, that kind of stuff, I'd still would love to work with you. Yeah. Yes.
I understand from in the past, there was I don't know if it's a photo contest or not, where the magazine would award basically a number of different photographers locations to go photograph private land, that kind of thing. Is that still?
So that magazine, that is through the foundation. I think you're talking about Wild in Focus. Yeah, so Wild in Focus is a collaboration between the foundation, the agency, and CBBs, visitor bureaus. And basically it is hooking up a photographer with a private landowner to shoot wildlife, and then you get prizes from it. And that still exists, happens every year. They publish a book every year. It's quite beautiful. The submissions that they get in are just amazing. Plus, you also, if you're lucky enough, get to shoot on someone's private land and get to see what kind of wildlife they have out there. And when they say wild in focus, it's not just wildlife. I believe some of the things is botany. There's 3 or 4 different categories that they use. But it is a different entity. I believe the headquarters in Corpus Christi, but I think the website is Wild in Focus. Yeah. Now, we do run some photo contests. One thing that the magazine runs is more of getting people outside more than showing artistic photographs. However, State Park is running a huge photo contest right now, and they're doing 4 quarters. They have some really cool prizes. Yeti got involved, Whole Earth got involved. Unfortunately, no camera equipment got involved. What a shame. Precision camera does help us out quite a bit. So in the past, we've been able to run photo contests with the kindness of their heart, because as a state agency, we can't pay you, but we can have sponsorships through other people that can, which is really, really nice. The agency as a whole doesn't do a whole bunch of photo contests because of this little issue with how do we pay people? How do we get things? So we always have like a secondary partner that does that with us. That's a state bureaucracy thing. More than anything else. But we have been, I've been trying to talk my art director into doing a whole entire photo issue. It's been quite a long time since the magazine has done that. And I would love to do a whole entire photo issue from contributors' views on what they see, whether that's going to be state parks or something along the lines. I don't know. But I think that would be really, really nice. To have 70 pages of nothing but photography, I think it'd be amazing. No words. A picture's is worth 1,000 words, right? Why do you need words? Any other questions? Yes.
Do you do like one?
I'm sorry.
Color only, or do you do like?
Do both. The only tricky thing with black and white is trying to make black and white work with a whole bunch of color photographs. And so we can balance that out by having some sort of theme or making sure that the atmosphere kind of goes with the other ones. This is another reason why you should research the magazine art direction, because sometimes this is a terrible word to use, cobble together a whole bunch of photographs to go into one feature. Because it's 8 different voices, I gotta somehow make them look like they all fit together. So I sometimes look for certain atmospheres or some sort of running thing in there, you know, the way that they shot or something along those lines. So if you shoot beautiful artistic stuff, and this happens all the time, I love them. I absolutely love them. I just can't put them anywhere in the magazine. You heard the phrase, right? Kill your babies. That's how I feel sometimes. Sometimes I shoot something really, really pretty and I'm just like, look, and they're just like, no. I was like, okay, I guess mine now. Yes.
Can you explain the role of the editor, the art director, the photo editor, or any other decision-making structures?
So the top tier is the publisher or publication manager, depends on what they do. Their job basically is to do a whole bunch of budgets. I would not want that job at all. They're also responsible for talking with the press, getting news things out, doing direct mail, all that business stuff that goes behind running a magazine. They are also responsible for putting together what we call a flat plan. And basically every single month you say, this is the cover, this is what the article is, I'm going to put this ad here. They're responsible to talk with the salespeople to see how many ads they have, what size, and where to put them. So they put the flat plan together. The person under that is going to be the art director, publication designer. They come all sorts of different names. Their job is to say, oh, we have that editorial, we have these photos, how can I make this to fit together to go into these pages? As the photo editor, I'm responsible for gathering all the photos, culling them down, and giving a small selection to the art director and talking to them. What are you seeing? What kind of art direction do you want for this? Let me get you the right photographs. Let me talk to the photographers. Please shoot it this way. Or, hey, here's some photos. This is the direction that you're going to go. So we work closely together a lot, where she'll contact me and be like, this is what I need. Can you find me this? Especially last minute changes. That happens quite a lot, way too much, where they're just all like, hey, we need a photo for the sidebar or this article that needs to go in there. So we work together quite closely. Then we do have an agency photographer. He works for the agency. I have a photographer that just works for the magazine, and she also does our social media. Yay for young people, because I don't want to do that. Then on the other side, you have an editor. The editor's job is to contact writers, to get queries from writers, to say, hey, this year we're going to talk about, these are the themes that's going to go in every single magazine, and kind of divide it up, find writers for that, find if something's already written, how do we make it different, those kind of things. I talk to him mostly only for photo essays and for anything that's like book related. We do a couple of stories about authors who've written outdoor books or state park books this year, and kind of talk to them, hey, this would be great because they have beautiful photographs to go along with this. This would be a really good feature. Underneath him, you have a managing editor. Her job is basically to go out and write some of the smaller pieces, but also to contact the people who are doing the queries, make sure that they're turning in their articles on time, go through and help edit. Those two people also edit all the manuscripts that come in, because they have to have certain word counts, and writers are just as bad as photographers. We overshoot and they overwrite. You can tell them 1,800 words and you'll get 2,200 words every single time. That's okay. They ask me for 4 pictures, they get 8 every single time. So, you know, I think it's the hardest thing to cool yourself down, whether it's a photographer or whether you're writing words. Underneath there are what we have a proofwriting set, and their whole entire job is after it gets edited, they go through and they proof it all. Most boring job ever, because they're looking for grammar mistakes, and better yet, trying to make sure that all the facts are where they need to be. And in my world, you have a whole bunch of people who talk to scientists and say, is this how you want to word this? Is this okay for you? Another job that I don't want. And that's pretty much the magazine team. Texas Highways has basically the same structure. They just get a lot more funding than we do. So they have about 5 editors, everything from an editorial editor to a travel editor to, I think, a food editor. Good for them. But only one photo editor, unfortunately. And Texas Highways also has no in-house photographers. They got rid of those quite a while ago. So we're lucky that we still have a couple of photographers in-house that are able to shoot this kind of stuff. No. So we actually print in Royal Printing. It's in, I think, in Kansas. It's in the Midwest somewhere. Yeah. We switched from Quadri and now we're at Royal Printing. It's a smaller press company and we're quite happy with them. I don't think there are any presses in Texas left. If there is, they're really, really small. We don't really get to choose who we work with. What we can say is, here's our press run, and put it out to bids, and whatever bid is good for the state agency, that's who we have to use. And that's true for all state agencies, including when we buy equipment and all this other kind of stuff. We have a certain price range that we cannot go over. Once we do, it goes out of our hands and goes to someone else. So I'm I'll just tell you this, two lenses broke. I put in the request for it. They're putting bids out and I can tell you 100% it's gonna be Precision Camera that we're gonna buy them from. But it's just paperwork. Yeah, Texas Highways unfortunately has to do the same thing. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you have any particular exclusivity requirements that say like, okay, well, this image, oh, sorry, you used it in something in a photo contest, therefore it's been published and we can't use it because it's been published already?
So most magazines want first North American published rights, which means that that image has not been published before, minus photo contests, self websites, social media, all that kind of stuff. Means that has it ever been published as an editorial piece, a news piece, something along those lines. That's what first North American published right means. Almost every single magazine will want that unless, of course, we're looking for something rare and specific. Those rules kind of go out of the thing. There are a few magazines that probably don't care so much and will reuse them, probably because their price point is extremely low, so that they can't do that. Part of the contract is in mine and Texas Monthly and Texas Highways. We all basically have the same contract where it says on their first American published rights. Now, that doesn't mean once you publish with us, you can sell it to anyone else that you want. Magazines just buy usage rights. We do not buy your copyright. The photograph is always yours, unless someone's willing to pay you a whole bunch of money. And there was a brief short time that I worked for an industrial company, Shell. Shell would pay me a whole bunch of money to take my copyrights. Why would I ever need a photograph of an oil rig? I was just like, you can have it. So they're not mine anymore at all. In fact, when I shoot for the magazine, I give up my copyrights. TPWD now owns my copyrights. As a contributor, that will never happen. We just pay for usage rights, and usage rights literally means one time that we get to use it as in the publications, we get to use an app and website. And if we ever want to push that particular article or push that issue, those are the only times that we're going to use your photograph, and we pay you for that. Almost every magazine works that way. Or they should.
You buy stock, it's all.
I'm sorry.
Do you buy or use stock publications?
I try to avoid it. My art director has specific things that she wants sometimes, and almost all of those are going to be wildlife on white backgrounds so she can get it cut out. So there is a few things that you'll see stock wise, but it's rare that we do it. But stock is a great place to sell your images. I would highly recommend LME, which is a UK company. They pay rather well and they're always looking for photographs. I would stay away from places like Shutterstock or Adobe. They don't pay at all or very, very, very little. And they do give away a lot of photographs. But stock sites are great places to use your images. The only problem with stock sites for me is if you have a photograph on a stock site, I won't purchase it. Unless you can say it's never been used and you pull and you just make sure that it hasn't been used before we publish, then I'm okay with that. But it's usually, it gets a little tricky. So I try to avoid anything that people have the same image on the stock site. Now, if you have images from the same series, I'm okay with that. That doesn't bother me a bit. They're close, but not the same. One thing you do have to remember if you work with me or Texas Highways, we are state agencies. Guess what? You get to fill out a EINS number. You have to file that with the Texas Comptrollers. Of course, we walk you through that process. You only have to do it once unless we haven't used you in a few years, and then they make you do it again. Then you have to submit, we have to create PO numbers. That PO number has to be on your invoice, so you have to wait for us to PO number. It's not us, it's AP, it's out of our hands. They create it. They send it to us. We ask you to invoice with that PO number. Then it goes to the Texas comptrollers. The Texas comptrollers pays you. One thing you got to remember that if you have any child support payments that you have not made or education payments that you have not made, they will siphon that off the top before they pay you. And of course, you can't be a terrorist or be any part of that. They check your name on a list somewhere. I don't know how that works. I have never had a photographer fail on that account. So hopefully I won't ever in the future. But I do have to say, Texas comptrollers, bless their hearts, they now do all the paying for everyone in the state, including law enforcement and everyone else. So they get pretty far behind. So we try to get you paid before it publishes. It never works out because they're usually about 4 to 6 weeks behind, and that's how long you have to wait for a check.
Except when they lie for you, but when they're in line like that.
Yes, exactly.
Here.
Yep, you're right.
He works at, that's the office.
Oh.
The office accountant.
See, there you go. I had to say, I mean, my travel vouchers take just as much time as a contributor, so it's no different who's getting the check. It just takes that long because they're that far behind. During COVID, it was even worse. They were probably about 2.5 months behind because nobody was going to the office. So they've gotten a little bit better, hopefully, maybe. I'm still waiting for a travel voucher from like 2 months ago, so who knows?
We assume you're not using large format cameras.
No.
What are you using?
Now, let's say I will take film photography. I'm all good with that. Just don't send me your negatives. Only because I can scan them. I have that equipment. I just can't send them back legally. I can do things where I can like leave them in a packet, you know, up front or something like that. But legally, I'm not allowed to send merchandise back to anyone. I don't know these 8 rules, they're so weird. But if you shoot film, yay. Magazines will still take scanned film. That doesn't bother anyone as long as make sure that you're scanning it at a good resolution. Large format, no. Me and Earl kind of did a little photo essay where we went out in state parks and did some large format out there. That was a lot of fun. It never got published, unfortunately, only because we got bumped for another story and then it just never manifested itself anymore. And Earl retired two years ago, but he shoots large format. If you ever have a chance to do one of his photo tours, he used to work with Precision Camera. I think he now is working with someone down in the Big Bend area. He is a fantastic landscape photographer. Really, really knowledgeable about large format and medium format as well. He's just a wealth of knowledge and just a really great guy. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll stick around for a little while if anyone wants to talk to me personally. I did leave some business cards up here. Feel free to take some, send me an email, get your copy of your magazine. I do have some additional ones if you want to take one. This issue is very, very special because it is completely different than the rest of the magazines. It is the 100-year anniversary. We even had a nice typesetter who made the type for the front. It's even got a little glossiness and some spot color that we never afford otherwise. And it has some really cool photographs in there. So you can kind of see all over the place what we do. Yeah. And we do have a website if you ever want to look. There is a flipper book on the website and an app. And so you can kind of browse through the other kind of photographs that we're looking for. Or if you just ever have a question, feel free to email me. I usually get back to you within about a week.
One last section.
Yeah.
If you looked at the photo competitions for NAPfS, for this photo club.
Yes, I released through there. I will take a look again.
So where does one normally get these magazines?
So subscription is the easiest way. During the pandemic, what happened is the distribution who distributes magazines changed hands all over the place because nobody wanted to have a newsstand anymore and stuff like that. So you may notice your favorite magazines are not where they used to be. But Barnes and Noble, HEB, I think Walmart. But again, we're switching distributors, so I'm not 100% sure about the Walmart part, but Barnes and Noble is always a good fit. Mhm. Yes, okay, yes. We have some really great deals on subscriptions. Not only do you get the magazine for a year, we're doing it all on Compass where you can also get our app for free. We've been doing the app now since 2016. And it has all articles since that time period. We stored them all, so there's like 400 articles on there. And they're organized very differently than a flipper magazine. We made it so you can go to a bucket and say, hey, photo essays. You can click on there and it shows you all these photo essays, or you can click on say, hey, state parks, and it'll show you a whole bunch of things from state parks. So it's a fun little app. It's been our pet project and it was a pain to learn, but it was a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Well, can we have one more round of applause for Sonja? So before you leave, I know everybody's getting up. My goodness gracious, it's not that late. Yeah. Oh, well. Several goes through. Okay, so next month for the speaker, we have Van Nguyen. He is the Sony professional here in town, and he will be coming to speak. He and I haven't nailed down the topic yet because he started telling me some other things that he's doing. And it's like, well, do you want to talk about that? Well, I could. Well, how about that? Maybe, you know, so we may end up with a rather interesting combination of different topics that Van will be talking about. So be prepared for that. And well, Clay has something.
Okay, so give any of your program ideas to Patrick. I'm sure if you have a speaker in mind that you could, or yourself even, to talk about a topic, he'd love to set you up for a future month. The second thing is that popular voting for the June submissions needs to be done soon, and also 30th, by the 30th. And also we have the show that we're putting together for the Pecan Street Cafe, and we'd like to do that by popular choice. We have 19 images submitted by our photographers. We kind of need to get those down to probably 12. So if you would please help us out by voting on the Coffee Cafe, the West Cafe pictures, as well as the intermediate and advanced categories like you always do. So that would be really nice. Thank you to Ed Pete for manhandling the camera and getting all that together. And thank you all for coming. And is there any other final messages? Bill?
To say something about our next photo competition.
Oh, yeah.
We got new judges, we're good there. So, and it's all with the iPhone. I'm gonna have to go big in on one thing, I'm sorry. Our PSA judge, and sound like everybody's already on it. One of our judges is back there. The next competition theme?
It's slow.
It's 3 in the morning.
Oh,
So-
weird fact, magazines will publish cell phone images. The technology's gotten so good, as long as there's not low lights, they're not all that great, but I've published several of cell phone images.
You're kind of stuck with JPEG there.
That's okay.
Also, June 2nd and 3rd, if you want to come out and support. I know Josh is doing a talk. You got the Precision Camera Expo, all 3 talks. Josh is doing a talk on Milky Way photography, of course. And I'm actually on there now. I'm doing aviation photography on June 3rd from 4 to 4:45 or something. So all 3 talks. So
Yeah, support Precision Camera. They've always been a great supporter of the club.
Great supporter for a lot of photographers.
I think we can wrap it up and let Ed shut down the camera here. Thank you much for coming. It's good to see a big crowd here. Patrick, thank you for a great speaker.